Good morning and welcome to this obesity prevention and management stream. My name's Zoe and I'm the veterinary nutrition partner for Purina, and today I'm going to cover some everyday essentials for obesity prevention. So during this session we're going to look at all of these different points, starting at defining what obesity is, sort of the prevalence rates that we're seeing in the UK but also globally, those risk factors associated with obesity, why we need to maintain a healthy weight for our dogs and cats, looking at those everyday prevention tips that we can utilise within our practices, and also those life stage touch points in which we can make some really clear recommendations around obesity prevention. So what is obesity? The World Health Organization defines obesity in humans as an excess of body fat, frequently resulting in adverse health effects. However, there is no agreed upon quantitative definition of obesity in pets. Some authors have suggested that cats and dogs are obese if they are 20, 25% or even 30% or more over their ideal body weight. However, as limited data exists on the nature of an optimal individual pet's body weight, determining the exact percentage of over ideal weight can actually be quite difficult. The most widely accepted and practical method of assessing excess body fat is a body condition scoring method, created by Purina in 1993. This is performed visually and through palpation. It is a subjective and semi-quantitative method of evaluating body composition. Body condition source systems assess visual and palpable characteristics that correlate to subcutaneous fat, abdominal fat, and superficial musculature, particularly concentrating on the rib cage, those dorsal spinous processes, and around the waist. The validated 9-point scoring system for cats and dogs is a widely accepted method. Using the 9-point system, each point represents a 10 to 15% excess body weight. If looking back at what we talked about, how we're defining obesity, and if this is around weighing approximately 25% or more over ideal, this would be equivalent to a 7 or more on the 9-point scale. However, we do recognise that on both the dog and the cat body condition scores, we are saying that they are around ideal, around about a 5, and anything above a 5, we start classing them as being overweight and then towards obese. So what about the prevalence of obesity? Obesity is a disease of global significance and is the most common cause of malnutrition encountered by vets. And what we mean by malnutrition is they're not getting the right nutrition. Therefore, these dogs and cats, unfortunately, are putting on weight because they're not receiving the right ratio of nutrition. When we think malnutrition, sometimes we think about those dogs and cats that are underweight, but we must sort of change our mindset on that and remember that obesity is the opposite effect of that. And we all know, being in clinics and working in practices, we know that we're seeing obese and overweight dogs and cats every single day of the week. It is an increasing problem. In the recent years, the rates of obesity and overweight classification in dogs growing by 2% and in cats by about 1.3% in those 3 years between 2015 and 2018. And pet obesity is actually escalating in parallel with human obesity in the Western world. So looking at reaching about 51% of dogs and 44% of cats in 2018 were classed as being overweight or obese by the Pet Food Manufacturing Association. Again, if we look overseas and look in the US, very similar figures are stated. According to the 2018 Association for Pet Obesity Prevention Survey, an estimated 55.8% of dogs seen by vets were overweight or obese, with 18.9% of those classified as obese, and 59.5% of cats seen were classed as overweight or obese, with about 33.8% of them being classed as obese. Globally, to fit with this, multiple studies again have estimated that 27 to 59% of pet dogs and cats are above their optimal weight, and unfortunately this trend does appear to be increasing. In a very recent study published in 2020, this looks at, across several different countries, looking at dogs being assessed being overweight or obese, and you can see the percentage does vary, but most shockingly, and I think we really need to look at this because this is a very recent figure, but in the UK we're looking at 58.4% of dogs assessed were classed as overweight or obese, and I think that these numbers are pretty shocking, and therefore we can agree that looking at prevention is just as important as managing these dogs and cats that are overweight. We do have a part to play in preventing this happening and stopping them becoming obese in the first place. So with the domestication of dogs and cats, we have dramatically changed the environmental and social behaviours of these animals. Pets no longer hunt, compete for food resources, or live in those harsh environmental conditions. And currently, most pets live indoors, are individually housed, and have plenty of food available to them. In addition, most of these pets are spayed or neutered, which has metabolic implications. As a consequence of these social and environmental changes, the average pet has a lower energy requirement compared with its ancestors. So whilst we consider the risk factors associated with dogs and cats, it's important to maybe just start thinking in our everyday practices, how can we incorporate these points and intervene to offer owner education and support. So breed is our first risk factor. There's a certain breeds of dogs that do appear to be at greater risk of being overweight, including our Cocker Spaniels, Dachshunds, Dalmatians, our famous Labrador Retrievers, Golden Retrievers, Shetland Sheepdogs, and also Rottweilers. In a very recent study led by the RVC Vet Compass programme, they've highlighted particularly that pugs, beagles and golden retrievers can be classed as obese-prone breeds. And again, for cats, it's been indicated that mixed breed cats can be more likely to become overweight compared to their purebred counterparts. So again, just thinking, do we need a breed-targeted approach? Age, we know the peak prevalence of overweight and obese conditions in cats and dogs is during their middle-aged years, so somewhere between 6 and 19 years for dogs and 5 to 11 years in cats. And during their growing years, when they're more active and still developing, dogs and cats are less likely, but not impossible, to be overweight. In adult pets, weight gain is more common because they consume more calories than they're burning. And then in senior animals, weight gain can be due to a decrease in activity levels alongside a decrease in metabolic rate. Cats, on the other hand, actually from the age of 12 onwards are more prone to marked weight loss. So again, just important to note. Therefore, it's quite important to understand and identify healthy weight in pets at each life stage is key to maintaining health and increasing their longevity. Sex and neutering, important things to consider. It just tends to be more common in females than male dogs, obesity, but the opposite appears to be true in cats, with males, especially male neutered cats, being more prone to obesity. However, both dogs and cats, regardless of what sex they are, neutering status has a massive impact. In both dogs and cats, neutering results in altered sex hormones, which leads to changes to their metabolic and behavioural changes. And what we tend to see is these behavioural changes lead to weight gain, is due to increased food-seeking behaviour and decrease in overall physical activity. And metabolic rates significantly reduce in neutered cats to around 30%. And again, all of these changes increase the risk of dogs and cats becoming overweight. And again, taking all of those into consideration, the health and behavioural benefits of neutering is generally considered to be more important than the increased risk of obesity, but we do need to highlight it. Excessive food intake is a huge risk factor for obesity. In a recent survey of 5,000 pet owners, interestingly, over a quarter of pet owners overfeed their pets just to keep them happy, with 54% giving their cats and dogs food when they beg for it, and 50% rarely or never carefully measuring out their food. So again, some scary statistics there when we're thinking about changing habits. Use of feeding cups or scoops to measure out food has also been found to be a really inaccurate method. The accuracy ranging from an 18% underestimation to a 80% overestimation in correct portion size. So again, just worth thinking about. In that same survey of pet owners, half of cat and dog owners admit to feeding their pets till all they can eat at each serving, and 56% recognise that they give their pets treats to get more affection. So as we know, owners control food intake, and we need to educate owners, raise awareness around feeding amounts, quantities, and the best methods as well. Food type. Type of food, either wet or dry in itself, does not influence weight gain. Weight gain is influenced by the amount of calories a pet consumes against their individual requirements. But it is worth noting that dry foods do have a higher energy density than wet, and it has been suggested that owners may be more prone to overfeeding a dry food, as the correct portion size to them might look quite small. So actually just thinking about that as a potential risk factor. Environmental and activity levels. So many studies have cited that inactivity and restricted or no outdoor access is a risk factor for obesity, especially for those pets that live in apartments or flats. Interestingly, cats that live with dogs or in multi-cat households with one or two other cats are actually also predisposed to becoming obese. So just something to bear in mind. And we know physical activity is important in preventing weight gain and maintaining that weight loss. Owner behaviours. So companion animals are increasingly viewed as family members, and it's been reported that owners of obese pets tend to humanise their pets, which has been shown by owners speaking to their pets more. Owners are more likely to allow their pets to sleep with them, and interestingly, they spend more time watching their pets eat. So again, quite an interesting insight into owner behaviours. A new study confirms that when considering the risk factors contributing to overweight dogs, one of the main obstacles faced by owners in helping their pets have a healthier life is their own inability to identify an ideal weight or body condition for their pet. So 33% of owners identify their dog as being ideal body condition, when actually their dog is either overweight or obese, and only half of pet owners were able to correctly identify whether their pet was a healthy weight. So again, that sort of understanding of their awareness. Underestimating the commitment of owning and caring for a dog can play a part in the development of obesity. So often the greatest cost is not actually a financial one, it's one rather of time, the time required to exercise the dog or cat, the training required, the time to monitor a pet's behaviour at home, for example. According to the PDSA Poor report in 2020, 62% of households underestimate the cost of owning a dog before getting one. So again, just an interesting risk factor to take into consideration. So one of our other risk factors that we probably wouldn't have thought about a few years ago, and unfortunately is the dreaded word of COVID, is something that we do potentially need to take into account. So with already growing trends in obesity that we've seen, and already having really high numbers of overweight and obese dogs and cats, what actually could the impact of COVID and our lockdowns be? What are we going to see over the next few months and years? Pet ownership, scary, isn't it? It appears to have really increased, or the demand for pet ownership has really increased due to people's changes in working and lifestyles, and them thinking they have more time for a pet when maybe they didn't feel that they did before. 3.2 million households in the UK have acquired a pet since the start of the pandemic, with now 17 million pet owning households in the UK. So if we just take a minute to take that number in, that's a huge number of people in the UK now with pets, and our part to play in the prevention of obesity. The global lockdowns have seen changes to our daily routines for owners. We all know this, and also for the pets that will really impact on that pet's feeding behaviours and also their exercising activities. So we've actually seen two trends surge during the pandemic. Feeding from table scraps and treating. So pet owners are now eating nearly all of their meals in the home as opposed to at the office or at school or in restaurants. So this increases the number of occasions for owners to give into begging pets. So, and we've just said, haven't we, the number of the percentage of people that do give food, to keep their pets happy and in those begging situations. What we've also seen is sales of pet treats surge as pet owners spend more time with their dogs and cats at home, and this is leading to more of those treating occasions. So with both of these trends, we can assume changes to their daily rations will also not be altered to take into account these additional food items. So unfortunately, the knock-on effect from these lockdowns and our pandemic we've been living through is potentially another rise in obesity. So now we've considered the risk factors, the next question really is why maintain a healthy weight? So as part of prevention, we really need to adopt as veterinary professionals this very positive approach to our pet owners about the benefits of maintaining a healthy weight in pets throughout their lives. And I think that's really important. It's not just for a moment in time, it's for their entire lives. As well as owners not recognising what a healthy weight is, they actually don't understand the benefits for their pets. Research has shown that pets who maintain a healthy weight enjoy a significantly longer and healthier life. So restricting calorie intake without any essential nutrient deficiency delays aging and extends lifespan in all species. Obesity is associated with exercise intolerance, therefore maintaining a healthy weight will lead to normal mobility and the ability to exercise, which is a real clear positive. Studies investigating overweight dogs and cats have identified many of the same health problems that are observed in overweight humans. So I think, again, with the recent sort of focus around obesity in humans, this hopefully will help us in many, many ways. Maintaining a healthy weight will reduce the incidence of many obesity-related diseases such as diabetes, lower urinary tract disease, osteoarthritis, other orthopedic diseases like ruptured cruciates, for example, cardiorespiratory diseases and neoplasia. Obesity prevention is necessary for the health of dogs. The biochemical profile of obese dogs often shows an increased risk of things like pancreatitis, gastrointestinal disorders, and also a greater incidence of obesity-related metabolic dysfunction. So a huge amount of reasons why to maintain a healthy weight. I just thought I'd pull in an interesting thought process as well. We don't often think of the cost of being overweight. What does that really cost? So I've just pulled some figures from Nationwide Pet Insurance that's based in the USA. They recently released some data showing that insurance claims for conditions linked to or exacerbated by obesity rose for the 9th straight year in 2020, accounting for 20% of all the company's claims and totaling more than $90 million in veterinary expenses. So again, just another thing to really think about. Obesity is a costly endeavor. Owners probably don't think about it like that, but I think again we kind of need to put that to the forefront of our minds. So really highlighting this message of why we want to maintain a healthy weight. In a landmark Purina study, 48 paired Labradors were tracked throughout their entire lifespan. And we had these paired Labradors with one dog in each of the pair consume 25% fewer calories than their litter mate. And what's really, really important here to highlight is we had two groups of dogs. We had our control dog group, and their body condition score was maintained on average around about a 6.7 out of 9. So just to highlight, not grossly overweight, they weren't grossly obese, they were just ever so slightly overweight. And the ideal dog group, sort of maintained on average their body condition score around a 4.6 out of 9, so classified as ideal. So the study revealed that maintaining an ideal body weight from puppyhood, again I'll highlight throughout life, helped increase their lifespan by nearly 2 years. So again, just to think about that, 2 years longer, and significantly delayed the onset of chronic diseases associated with aging, specifically osteoarthritis. So I've included this slide that just helps show the incidence of osteoarthritis. So by the age of 5, 40% of the control dogs, so again, the slightly overweight dogs, had arthritis, while the ideal dogs, only about 10% had arthritis. So the presence and severity of arthritis was greatly reduced in those ideal body condition score dogs. And also the ideal body condition score dogs also had delayed age-related changes in a number of their immune parameters as well. So again, another key message, we could really see from this study that maintaining an ideal body condition, extended lifespan, and also reduce those incidences of significant diseases. In a later research study by Salt et al. In 2018, an association between overweight body condition score and shorter lifespan was also identified in pet dogs of various breeds. So again, we do have numerous studies that really do support this, and again, important to try and communicate this with our owners to really give them the facts to why they want to do this and why we want to maintain a healthy weight. So how can we look at how we can sort of incorporate this into our everyday working lives? Reversing obesity in pets can be extremely difficult, and it's therefore sensible to prevent inappropriate weight gain from developing in the first place. This is more challenging than it seems, as weight gain can be gradual and it's often missed until it's too late. So obesity prevention is a lifelong endeavour, and it requires owners and the veterinary professionals, so ourselves in clinics, to constantly monitor a variety of different factors. Changing behaviour patterns is as hard as it is for pets as it is for humans. Purina research demonstrated the difficulties faced by both owners and pets in establishing behavioural change, and also the level of support required to successfully maintain these changes. So what's really important is this support is needed from the moment when the owner adopts or brings a new pet into their home, to really encourage them to adopt a healthy lifestyle right from the beginning, rather than trying to change bad behaviours later down the line, as this will be much harder. This support in most cases is required all the way through to later life. So again, really looking at that whole lifetime of their pet and what we can do in clinic to support them. And this is to help pet owners identify when their pet is gaining weight and instill those prevention techniques throughout the pet's whole life. Sources often recommend that owners with overweight or obese pets turn to their vets for help and advice. Yet, interestingly, the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention's most recent survey suggested that 68% of pet owners said they would like their vets to recommend a routine or a maintenance or a life stage diet for their pets, but only 38% reported their vets had done so. 22% said they had to ask, and 40% received no dietary advice from their vets. So we really need to think about this, and we should feel really confident that owners do want us to provide nutritional recommendations, and focus on dogs and cats maintaining a healthy weight should be a key priority. So really we need to take that nutritional conversation back. Owners want it, so let's give it to them. Purina's most recent study has also suggested that providing the tools for home assessment and educating owners about importance of weight management for their pet's health is likely to be key in preventing and reducing the prevalence of pet obesity. So we need to provide those tools to our owners, and we really need to give them so they can do it on an everyday basis at home. Body condition scoring is, as we've said, the most widely accepted clinical tool, so we should be really utilising this on a day-to-day basis with every pet at every visit, and be included in every single clinical exam. With that, we should be really trying to create a real positive body image around ideal body weights and conditions, and really the benefits of being a healthy weight should be part of our day-to-day conversations to really increase that awareness on a very consistent basis as well. We do really need to play a part in raising awareness on what is normal. Also, really focusing on the positive aspects of clients' pets being a healthy weight, like living longer, healthier aging, being more active, less pressure on their joints, rather than constantly focusing on the negative elements of being overweight. This again might really help change that mindset to owners. We know that owners are pretty poor at assessing body condition. However, to perform a body condition score requires no sort of specialist knowledge or equipment, and actually could be really easily taught to an owner. They just need a score chart and for you guys to give them that guidance. So this is something we should be really doing early on in their ownership as part of getting them to be more aware, and the sooner we can establish this is the better. This may be one of the key first steps towards preventing obesity, as it will help them to detect a problem, it'll highlight what is normal, and then hopefully it'll help support them to change any habits to maintain their pet's health and weight. Obviously, in conjunction with body condition score, we should be taking regular body weights, as this is a precise and objective approach, and those slight changes in weight can be really easily identified and addressed. So doing this in conjunction with body scoring every time starts to build you a picture of a dog's individual ideal body weight. So, for example, an 18-month-old skeletally mature Labrador, you see it weighing 25 kilos, is about a 5 out of 9. And then a year later, he comes back for his booster. He's now looking more like a 6 out of 9. He weighs about 27.5 kilos. And simply going back to his notes, you know for him, 25 kilos is around his ideal. And therefore, you can just start initiating that conversation and help the owner to tackle things sooner rather than later. In small pets such as small breed dogs and cats, weight changes should be evaluated in terms of percentage change. So, for example, 500-gram increase in a 4-kilo cat doesn't sound too bad, but if we consider it as a percentage, that's a 12.5% increase, and that is actually similar to me putting on 8 kilos. So again, just another way to look at it, and then potentially to be able to really evaluate and make some changes. Another effective tool in obesity prevention is purposeful monitoring of the animal's diet and feeding regime. The WSAVA describes nutrition as the 5th vital sign after temperature, pulse, respiration and pain, and a nutritional assessment should ideally be performed in all pets at every visit. And we can look at utilising diet questionnaires to be able to aid you with that. But the point is that we do this at every visit. This also then reinforces to clients that diet and nutrition is important, and then we can identify changes and help clients to modify what they're doing. So we can utilise these questionnaires to gather all the information that we need, and to save time and to give owners time to really fill it out, we can hand this out pre-consultation. So this can be whilst they're waiting, wherever they're waiting at the moment, or even potentially emailed out to them. If you're filling this out with the owner, just be careful to use open questions to gain all the information you require. It also starts giving you some other information about species, age, breed and neutered status, which can all be really relevant when we're talking about nutrition. We want to include all aspects of the food being fed, so that's their main meal, any treats, any access to other foods, so particularly for cats that go outside, or if they're multi-cat or multi-pet households. And also it needs to include any supplements, any other foodstuffs to use to medicate, because these might not be sort of viewed as treats, or any training aids if they're young animals. We do need to know the brand of the food. That can be really useful, amount fed, frequency and how, is this ad lib or do they weigh it out? And also general information about current feeding management strategies. So do they already use raised bowls, puzzle feeders, microchip feeders? Any preference to types of bowls can be really useful information. And actually at this stage, just simply identifying if they're on an appropriate, complete and balanced life stage appropriate diet will actually just be a step towards obesity prevention, but we're going to look at life stage touch points later on. It is critical to control the feeding of extra foods, so table scraps or treats, and owners don't appreciate the significant calorie contribution that these food sources can make to their total dietary intake. And we know owners won't stop treating, but we do need to question them carefully, and we need to sort of talk to them about modifying their main meal as appropriate. And also, some owners don't see some additional foodstuffs as treats. Things like asking them if they add anything extra to their meals is a really good question, because you'll hear all sorts, that they add gravy, they add cheese, they add chicken, all of which will be calories. So again, it's just trying to gather all that information. We know that treats, if they are going to be used, which is fine, but we know they must not make up more than 10% of those daily energy requirements, and we must, really reduce the main meal accordingly. And we can't expect owners to know how to do this, so we need to support them and show them and tell them how much to take out of their food. These questionnaires can actually be useful in other ways, just, sort of reading between the lines, especially around the amount fed. If that's left blank, then we're pretty certain that the owner doesn't know how much they are feeding, so we might be able to assume that they aren't weighing it or measuring it out. If they mention cupful or scoopful or handfuls, again, obviously it's a good start, but from evidence we know they are a very imprecise means of proportioning dry food. So wherever possible, we need to be recommending digital scales, and we should be recommending that really early on for owners to utilise that, and weighing it out at every meal. So you can use just standard kitchen scales, or even there is some fancy weighing scoops that you could also recommend. And we know portion control feeding rather than ad lib or time limited feeding will reduce the risk of overfeeding, therefore obesity. So this is an important thing we need to mention. Feeding guidelines on different brands of food may differ, so even if we're not recommending a new diet, we should, again, just the basics, giving the owners the guidance to use the correct guidelines to the correct weight of their pet is another real simple thing, but can be a key part in prevention. So we also have to remember they are just guidelines, and they may well be too little for some pets and too much for others, and we need to take that into account, or we might have to pick a diet that's more appropriate for that lifestyle, so that might be worth considering. From Purina's feeding guidelines, we do adopt a bit of a safety margin, so decreasing or increasing by up to 15% on our guidelines to achieve appropriate body condition score is completely safe and recommended. And if you do need any other support outside of this, then obviously just get in touch with us directly and we can help you. Food bowls is another thing. It's been suggested, a study suggested that food bowl size might have an effect on the amount of food fed. So smaller bowls might actually prevent owners overfeeding. So it might be worth thinking about having some demo bowls in the clinic to ask owners which size they use and which side, and then advise them on which side is most appropriate for that size cat or dog. Again, having this conversation earlier can be really useful. Types of bowls, again, I'm a huge fan of puzzle feeders. These should be encouraged in the prevention of obesity, rather than using bowls all the time. Actually, these can be just used as everyday feeding, devices. Both dogs and cats no longer have to hunt for their food. It's literally just handed to them on a plate. So let's just make them work for it. They'll burn some energy, it'll slow them down, and it does provide that mental and environmental stimulation. And this can just be part of their everyday norm. Hiding food and moving food sources to other locations in the house can also be recommended as just day-to-day feeding strategies. As well as feeding the right food to the right amount and how to feed it is part of it, but also recommending appropriate exercise is the other side of obesity prevention. Owners will always overestimate exercise and underestimate the amount of food being fed. So we need to really support them and show them all different ways that they can exercise their dogs and cats. From our new research, we also found that owners with healthy weight dogs are more likely to have social support for friends for exercising. So I just thought that was quite an interesting, thought-provoking concept, that people that have got that social ability to go for walks together are more likely to have healthy weight dogs. So again, maybe considering things like local dog walking groups, as these will not only improve healthy weight of our pets, but bring communities together as well and have an impact on people's well-being. So just thinking a little bit about that. Encouraging owners to walk with friends or considering a buddy up scheme through the vets for owners who may struggle to find anyone to walk with could potentially be considered. We've got an increasing number of pet trackers as well that can be used to see how much exercise your dog or cat are doing. They're linked to an app so you can monitor that. So again, owners might be interested in that addition to their lives, or if not, utilising just their smartphones. Apps like Map My Walk might be really handy to see how much exercise that they are currently doing. And owners will often say we walk for miles and miles and miles, but in reality, it's usually a lot less. Not forgetting elderly people, exercising their dogs can be really difficult, especially if they've got medical concerns. So just providing them with some ideas around who could help them is another, if they can't do it themselves, then help them find people that can. There are charities such as the Cinnamon Trust, who are a charity for the elderly and terminally ill and their pets, and they can support in lots of different ways, but including, walking their dogs if they're physically unable. So, putting people in touch with those charities is a good idea. Borrow My Doggy, again, is a company that connects dog owners with trusted local people who would love to look after their dog. So the aim is to help dog owners when they need it, to give dogs more exercise, playtime, and allow people without a dog to spend quality time with one. So again, just another recommendation to help increase exercise. Utilising dog walkers to increase exercise, especially if owners feel their time limited. Again, just a way to sort of give other ideas. Not forgetting play burns calories, with the motto give attention, not food. So really encouraging that play aspect. Cats, particularly important. They need sort of short periods of quite intense play with toys to help them burn calories, but also to express their natural hunting behaviours. So again, recommending that element. Hydrotherapy could be considered just to maintain healthy weight, could just be part of normal exercise routines. So not necessarily just for overweight cases or rehab cases. Owners might want to consider that as part of their exercise. So free outdoor access can also play a part in obesity prevention, and when I tend to think about cats, and for some cat owners, it may be something they're not keen to do for many reasons. They might not want to let their cat out, which is fine, but then maybe providing some options for them. If they have a garden, could they consider having an outdoor secure pen, so that the cats can have some outdoor access? You can have different heights of things that they can jump on, roam around, move around in, that is secure. And another thing is potentially you could lead train a cat. I mean, it sounds mad, but potentially it's an option that you can note to an owner if they've identified that they've got limited outdoor space or they live in a flat. From an early age, you could encourage them to try and do that, and that could be an option to exercising cats. So again, just thinking outside of the norm and providing some really solid exercise recommendations. We've identified there is a need to provide owners with more support and recommendation in life stage nutrition. Where do you start? Which will have the biggest impact on obesity prevention? Well, for me, there are three key areas. Growing animals need the biggest amount of support and owner education to ensure these dogs and cats grow properly. Neutering, we know that alters dogs and cats' metabolic requirements, so a key moment to talk to them about appropriate nutrition. And senior, we know older animals tend to have lower metabolic requirements and decreased physical activity. So that's another area that we could concentrate on. So let's look at them in a bit more detail. So when we consider growth, we know growth and development in puppies and kittens is most rapid during those first 6 months. Puppies and kittens have a higher need in energy and essential nutrients to support that rapid growth. And particularly in dog breeds, we know that they sort of reach adult size at varying time frames because they mature at different rates. And obviously, more particularly, our large breed dogs take a lot longer to mature. So these large breed dogs end up on puppy foods for a significant length of time and can be up to sort of 24 months in total. We know that energy at weaning is twice that of an adult, and more than 50% or more of energy taken in is used for growth. So again, really energy demanding proportion of their life. And when most dogs are fully grown, they've increased their birth weight by 40 to 50 fold. So, it is quite incredible, really. So we know growth should be steady and not too fast. And we need to support that growth until they're, fully mature. And that's why they need to be on appropriate puppy and kitten diets before moving on to adult diets, even sort of post neuter. So to support this really energy demanding rapid growth process, puppy and kitten foods are adapted, in comparison to adult diets to support that. So like within our ProPlan puppy and kitten range, we've adapted some key nutritional factors to support that growth. And more specifically, with increased levels of protein, we know that helps build tissue, support rapid growth, and also for energy, and also increasing energy levels as well, particularly in our kilocalories, so calorie density, to also support that rapid growth and development. So puppy and kitten foods are very energy dense, and if they are fed incorrectly and not to the right guidelines, or if they're overfed, this will directly affect their growth and body condition. So again, it's important to be aware of that. So to prevent this from happening, we should be really looking at regular growth monitoring or puppy and kitten clinics, ideally monthly for the first 6 months, then every 2 to 3 months until they're fully grown. We can utilise different things to help support that. So growth charts could be a useful tool. They do depict a growth pattern for that particular size of dogs, and alterations, particularly in the amount of food being fed, can be recommended when puppies are found to be growing too rapidly, crossing those growth lines in an upwards direction on the chart, and also addressing any undergrowth or overgrowth issues during this critical early phase is the best route to set a dog on a path of a healthy weight for life. In conjunction with growth charts, we should use these alongside a regular body condition scoring. This will assess any excess body fat and whether feeding guidelines may need to be adjusted. We know preventing obesity in puppies and kittens is important, as it predisposes them to obesity for the rest of their lives. So this is a really key critical point to be monitoring them. We know overnutrition is also linked to skeletal development disorders and further orthopedic issues, very particularly in those large breed dogs. Again, really utilising our diet questionnaires at every visit will again give you that insight to what the owners are feeding, how much, and any changes on a previous visit. And these regular check-ins will enable easier conversations with owners around nutrition and maintaining that healthy growth pattern and body condition. So, they need to stay on the diets, but we need to really regularly monitor them so that they're not falling into that trap of being overfed. So our next nutritional touch point would be around neutering. So alongside those conversations of the benefits of neutering, we should be including discussions around appropriate nutrition, both before and after surgery, and then followed up in the months following neutering. So we really need to raise that awareness that once they neuter their animal, that their energy requirements are going to change. So we know neutering alters the sex hormones, that results in a decrease in hormone levels. So we can see a metabolic reduction by up to 30%, and this could coincide with a decrease in spontaneous activity or lifestyle. So again, thinking maybe around those indoor cats particularly. Changes in hormones, we tend to see this increase in food-seeking behaviour alongside a decrease in physical activity. So we tend to see food overconsumption, and then they're not doing as much activity as what we wanted them to. So the risk of obesity and health implications are associated with that. If pet owners are not aware or clear on these changes that happen and continue to feed their pet at the same amount of food or inappropriate amounts of a really energy dense puppy and kitten food, this will lead to an excess in weight. So one of the ways to support these dogs and cats after they've been neutered is utilising diets that have been adapted for neutered dogs and cats, and this will help prevent obesity. And these diets have been adapted in comparison to an adult product. So such as our ProPlan sterilised diets have been adapted in certain ways, such as increasing those protein levels, because we know that maintains lean muscle mass whilst maintaining an ideal body condition. But protein is also palatable and quite filling, so it sort of provides that satiety effect, and again that can be linked with that increased hunger element, that we're filling them up utilizing protein in that way. And protein provides energy, but it's not as calorific as fat. Fat is the most energy dense nutrient. We want to look at decreasing those energy amounts or levels. So they need to be reduced while still providing an increased nutrient to calorie ratio. So again, this supports that up to 30% decrease in their metabolic rate. to go hand in hand with that, these diets are reducing their fat levels, again because we said it's the most energy dense nutrient, so it makes sense to reduce these levels to support a decrease. Particularly in our dog sterilised product, it's around 9% fat, and the cat sterilised product is about 12% fat in our ProPlan range. Utilising fibre, so actually increasing fibres in a neutered diet, can be really useful using complex carbohydrates, as these take longer to break down and absorb, giving that fuller for longer sort of feeling, and will help them with this, again, this increased food seeking behaviour. And it will also help owners, that they don't have to give into that begging, because, hopefully the diet will make them feel very satisfied. It is important to remember that not all neutering diets may be suitable for dogs and cats until they're fully or skeletally mature, and we know that we tend to neuter dogs and cats before this time. So it's actually really important to continue those regular growth monitoring appointments, and to ensure those puppy and kitten diets are not being overfed as their metabolic rate slows down. And then if we've got this regular contact with our clients, we can move them over to a neutered diet when appropriate, to then continue to manage and maintain a healthy weight for life. Incorporating post-neuter clinic appointments, potentially at 3 months after neutering, could be a really sensible approach, as this is a good point to check in with the owner and their pet, reassess nutrition, body weight, body condition score. Potentially, some smaller breeds at this point and cats may be skeletally mature, and then we can sort of have a conversation directly about moving them onto a neutered diet. Larger breeds, we know they're going to need to be on a growth diet for longer, but keeping up those regular monitoring, those check-ins, and then having the discussions with them at the right moment to move over to these types of diets will really aid that obesity prevention. During adulthood, we really should be looking at 6 monthly checks on weight and body condition. This would be a really sensible approach, and again enable any changes in weight to be identified in their adult years and corrected sooner rather than later. So our next life stage to consider is our senior life stage. There are various definitions as to the age a pet becomes senior, and these age classifications are, largely subjective. For cats, there is an understanding that age-related changes do sort of begin from the age of 7, with further classifications as they age, so mature, senior, and geriatric. In dogs, there is a broader variation as the results of breed size. Larger breeds do tend to age more quickly and can be classed as senior from the age of 5, whereas our smaller breeds, they seem to age slower, and we generally classify them as senior from around the age of 10. Classically, dogs are classed on average senior from around the age of 7, just to, sort of give us that real guideline. The life expectancy of pets has also increased, and approximately 1/3 of pets presented to primary clinicians are now within the senior age range. And there is a growing recognition of the importance of preventative healthcare within this, and how nutrition can play, a key role in their senior health. We know that feeding appropriately for life stage is part of that fundamental process. So as we said earlier, age is a risk factor for obesity, and we know that peak prevalence of overweight and obese conditions in cats and dogs is during their middle-aged years. So really understanding the changes that occur as dogs and cats get older can help us provide appropriate nutritional advice and tailored diets and recommendations to coincide to reduce the risk of obesity in our senior pets. And then concentrating on the positives, increasing lifespan and reducing onset of chronic disease. So our next life stage is senior, and actually there's quite a difference between dogs and cats at this life stage. So their needs are very different, and their diets need to reflect that. So that's why we're going to look at them separately. I just wanted to point out there's no VDAF guidelines for senior diets, only growth and adult. So it's down to individual manufacturers' interpretation of senior requirements. So this is not standardized. So just to be aware of that. It is a growing area of research, and we must look at individual dog and cats' greatest needs when we're recommending a senior diet. So in dogs, they have a significant reduction in their metabolic energy requirements by 25%, and this tends to coincide with a decrease in their physical activity as they get older, and that's why we tend to see older dogs more likely to be overweight. Within our ProPlan 7+ range, we have adapted the energy requirements to support this change to help maintain a healthy weight. Protein, again, is really very important. It promotes maintenance of lean muscle mass and provides energy. And actually, if they don't have any conditions that require protein restrictions, such as renal and hepatic disease, there's no evidence that restricting it for healthy senior pets is beneficial. So we need to provide really good levels of good quality protein. Fat and energy requirements tend to be reduced in dogs, and in dogs there is very little evidence that fat digestibility is impaired as they get older, which is actually quite different in cats, so we'll look at that in a minute. But due to their reduced energy requirements and activity levels in many older dogs, weight gain is more of a concern. Therefore, fat content for most senior dogs should be reduced, as this is the most energy dense nutrient. Other important factors are things like increasing fatty acids to help that natural anti-inflammatory process, and antioxidants to support the immune system as well are all really important in a senior diet. Another area I wanted to spend a few minutes on is brain function, as this could be really easily overlooked in senior pets. But however, our OptiAge blend that we include in our ProPlan 7 Plus has been clinically proven to enhance brain function and help keep older dogs active, lively and alert. OptiAge is a blend of medium chain triglycerides from botanical oils that provide energy readily available for dogs' aging brain cells. So it's been clinically proven to help increase aging dogs' activity levels and interest in play visible in just 30 days. So with this innovation, we're helping keeping older dogs more active, and this could support those increased exercise or energy levels to sort of promote that healthy weight as they get older. So as we've said, cats are very, very different to dogs, and we need to look at them individually. Their energy requirements, interestingly, cats see around a 3% decrease in their energy requirements per year up to about the age of 11. And then actually you see an increase in their energy requirements in geriatric cats. So cats will increase weight up to about 10 to 12 years of age, but then they tend to then lose weight as they get older. To help maintain appropriate energy requirements to promote that healthy body weight so that they're not overweight or underweight, the feeding guidelines within our ProPlan Cat 7 Plus range is based on age. So we really concentrate on those age requirements. So there's an age range up to about 11 years, and then there's a feeding guideline from 12 years onwards. So as they get older, we increase the amount we feed them to support their increase in their metabolic energy requirements. So protein levels, the same as dogs, in the absence of any conditions requiring protein restriction, there's no evidence to restrict it. But actually providing good quality levels of protein actually becomes really much more important, especially in cats. It appears as they get older, they have an impaired ability to digest proteins properly. A fifth of cats over the age of 14 have a reduction in the ability to digest proteins, and could be a reason for the loss of muscle mass and body condition as they age. And that's seen, more so in cats versus dogs, so about 30% in cats and 10% in dogs. Fat digestibility is significantly reduced in many cats, and approximately 10 to 15% of cats aged 8 to 12 years and 30% of cats over the age of 12 have marked impairments in their ability to digest fat. And this again is likely to contribute to the weight loss and the increased in energy requirements that we see in many older cats, again, because fat is the most energy dense nutrient. Many senior cats may benefit from a more energy dense and nutrient dense diet to compensate for this, which is, very, very different to dogs and how we utilize and manipulate our 7 Plus diet. Again, same as dogs, antioxidants and fatty acids are hugely important for the same reasons. So senior clinics can provide an opportunity to encourage regular monitoring of healthy weight and body condition as our pets get older, alongside all the other preventative healthcare benefits that we know. Our overall aim will be to improve quality and longevity of life, but ensure they are on the correct nutrition for their life stage, and by promoting the benefits of being a healthy weight in later years. How regularly should we perform these clinics, maybe based on other issues, concurrent diseases and concerns? And nutrition is playing a part in that whole senior clinic approach and could be anywhere from, monthly to 3 monthly to every 6 months. And it's very much down to that individual. Similar to all other life stages, utilising those tools like your body condition score charts, those nutritional assessment forms and questionnaires will still remain the cornerstone and basis to that obesity prevention in those senior years. So as we come to the end of this session on obesity prevention, I just wanted to summarise a few key points. We know obesity is a disease of global significance and is growing, and we need to act now to start to slow down the rate and prevalence of obesity. We need to increase awareness of risk factors and highlighting this across the whole veterinary team to be more aware and act sooner. We need to increase that owner awareness too, that their pets at certain points in their lives are going to be more at risk. Let's consistently promote the benefits of being a healthy weight. Providing that consistent, positive body image to our clients will, with time, change mindset. Let's think about that subliminal messaging. Support and educate our owners. From our research, it shows owners need support to help them to keep their animals at a healthy weight, so we need to be central to that. And finally, let's take back the nutrition conversation. Owners want us to, so let's give them those appropriate life stage nutritional recommendations at the right time. And thank you for listening.